Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Strategic Planning Committee here at County Hall on Tuesday, the 7th of April. Have we got any apologies for absence today?
Yes, Chair, I've received apologies from Councillor Dodd and Councillor Sim.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. Minutes of the Strategic Planning Committee held on Tuesday, the 3rd of February, and also on Tuesday, the 3rd of March, have been circulated. Are members happy with those minutes? Thank you very much indeed. Disclosures of members' interests. Have any members of the Planning Committee got any interest they would like to disclose today? Councillor Swinell.
Yes, Chair. Declare Agenda 7 as being the Chair of Planning and Development Subcommittee at Blythe Town Council.
Thank you. Any other interests? Daniel Carr?
Yes, Chair. Item number 7, Blythe Relief Road. I'd like to declare that I have property within the vicinity of the application, and I also have a pecuniary interest. I'd like to declare that I have a predetermination of this application. So for that reason, I'd like to excuse myself when this item is discussed, please, Chair.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Thank you, members. So then that brings us on to determination of planning applications. We've got 3 applications before us today. Item number 5 on Seahouses, item number 6 in Swarland, and then item number 7, the Blythe Relief Road. So, ladies and gentlemen, for those that are visiting for the first time, I'll just take you briefly through the procedure we follow at the Planning Committee. As Chair, I introduce the application, ask the members if they've seen the site visit videos. The Planning Officer then presents his report, gives us any updates, changes to the recommendations. Then we have a public speaking slot, 5 minutes for objectors, 5 minutes for a local member, parish councillor, county councillor, and then 5 minutes for an applicant or supporters. The members of the committee can then ask questions of the Planning Officer, and then we debate the item, asking for a proposal, a seconder, and then we debate the issue, and we take a vote by majority. So, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, the first item is on page 29. And this is the proposed direction of residential development, use class 3C for 108 dwellings, including access, landscaping, parking, and associated infrastructure. And this is at land north and east of the Seafield Sports Park, Broad Road in Seahouses. Our Planning Officer, John Sharp, is going to take us through this application. John, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. There are 3 updates to provide on this one. Firstly, members may have noted that there is a condition missing at the end of the report. This is archaeology TBC. The applicant has been working with the county ecologist to get a written scheme of investigation for archaeological works in place prior to determination of the application. It wasn't quite ready in time for publication of the report, however, it has now been sorted out, and we have the wording of the condition to drop in to the list of conditions should the application be approved this afternoon. I would ask that the precise wording of that condition be delegated to officers, Chair. Secondly, there is a discrepancy between the recommendation at the beginning of the report and that set out in section 9. Just to confirm that it's essentially a summary at the top of the report and is broken down into full heads of terms at section 9. However, the summary at the top of the report mentions both on and off-site open space provision. The on-site provision doesn't need to be secured by legal agreement as it's within the red line boundary, so it can be controlled by condition. The off-site financial contribution towards parks and gardens does, however, need to be included within the 106. So apologies for any confusion on that front. What I will do just at the end, as I'm summarising here, I will go through and formally read out all the heads of terms, so there's no confusion. And finally, I've just skipped on there, sorry. Finally, at para 2.2 of the committee report regarding housing mix, this has been further amended, so there are now 12 more 3-bed units, 8 fewer 4-beds and 4 fewer 5-bed units. The proposed layout hasn't been affected by this update, but the reduction of larger dwellings does mean that the proposals are more in line with the recognised housing needs in the area. So I'll move on to the presentation. As the Chair has said, this is a proposal for the erection of 108 dwellings on land to the east of Broad Road in Seahouses. You can see the location plan here. The long tail going to the west of Broad Road is to do with drainage, just in case anybody was wondering. This is just an aerial view of the same, pointing out a few key locations there. Seafield Sports Park, obviously just next to the site. Broad Road Industrial Estate to the south, and the Seafield Caravan Park to the east of the site. This site is me trying to show you two things. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to amend the colours. The application is partly on land that is designated for housing in the local plan for approximately 80 to 100 houses. This forms by far the largest allocation in this part of the county. The allocated area lies immediately to the south of the Castle Drive and Castle View housing estate, which you can just see at the top of the picture there. But the northern portion of that allocation has not been included in the proposals due to the presence of significant known mine workings within that area. So what we've tried to do here is overlap the allocation, which is that bit to the north, and then with the planning application, which is the bit that's extending down to the south. Where the two overlap is the more yellow area within the middle there. So as noted in the report, further mining features have also been identified within the southern portion of the site as a result of pre-planning, intrusive investigations and archaeological works. However, the applicant has shown that these can be remediated and no objections are raised by the technical consultees. So what we have in terms of proposed layout is this. You can see the access coming from Broad Road, past a line of housing on the right with the Suds Pond to the left, and then into the main body of the estate, which is on that southern part of the application site, where it extends away from the allocation. I haven't included all of the house type images on here, as there are quite a few different ones, but these will just give you a flavour of the style, the materiality, and the detailing of the proposed development. And then I think an indicative street scene there, and then we are into the site photographs. These were taken back in the summer, looking south towards Seafield Park. You can just see the pylons associated with the football ground back at the back there. Looking north towards Castle Drive. And then some photos of the impacts of the intrusive investigations that were carried out towards the back end of the year, with some ground slumping resulting. That's that. So, in summary, 108 houses are proposed, partially within a site allocated for approximately 80 to 100 dwellings and extending into an unallocated area to the south. In terms of quantum, it's considered to be acceptable and would be an acceptable use of the wider site even without the local plan allocation. The proposals are therefore recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out in the report, plus the archaeology condition I've already mentioned, and a Section 106 agreement as set out in Section 9 of the committee report, including an affordable housing scheme for 19 affordable housing units. That's 33% rent and 67% DMV. On-site biodiversity net gain, including habitat creation and a monitoring fee of £4,664. Coastal mitigation contribution of £66,420. An education contribution of £99,000, that's towards SEND provision. A healthcare contribution of £87,000 towards capacity expansion in the local area. An open space contribution of £89,548.20 towards parks and gardens. Primary occupancy on all of the dwellings and public rights-of-way improvements as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, John. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we now come to our public speaking slots. We've got 2 public speakers this afternoon, Garen Thompson, the local county councillor, and Jack Conroy from Savills. I'd like to invite Guy to speak for no longer than 5 minutes, sir. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman and Committee. The site is within the village boundary, which was set by the Northumberland Coast Neighbourhood Plan, which was written before I was elected, but was passed by referendum in 2017, just after I was elected. And it's been in the housing allocation plan in the Northumberland local plan. So it's always been a question of when this scheme would come forward, not if it was going to come forward. So I think your job today is to try and make it the best scheme it can be. There is a population problem on the Northumberland coast. We've seen a steady decline in the number of people who live here all year round. Since the millennium, the population of Seahouses has fallen by 285 people, or 14.5%. Beadnell has fallen by 18%, and Bamborough has fallen by 29%. To put that into context, if the population of Newcastle fell by 14.5%, that would be about 40,000 people. And if the population of London fell by that much, it would be 1.3 million people. So it's not inconsiderate. Seahouses Primary School now has less than 70 pupils. The local employers are struggling to recruit, and the village community groups and services are becoming harder to sustain. The report itself recognises this importance. It states that all new housing within the neighbourhood plan area should be restricted in perpetuity to principal occupancy, occupation and secured through a Section 106 agreement. This clause, and this is very important to local people in the parish council, this clause must not be weakened, watered down or left unenforced. A local group have been collecting evidence from the Kilns estate in Beadnell, which has the same restriction. Evidence shows that 5 properties out of the 36 have an occupancy rate of under 50%. The council is investigating these cases, but it shows people are willing to try and chance these rules when we have them. For that reason, I believe the condition should be strengthened. A minimum annual occupancy threshold should be required of, say, 75%. An owner should be required to provide evidence such as electricity, gas, oil, water usage, which can be compared against normal levels for a permanently occupied home. Without these safeguards, there will always be loopholes, and the clause risks becoming words on paper rather than real protection for our local community. Secondly, I'm concerned that the wrongly named Broad Road, which connects the site to North Sunderland and is the most direct route to the school and the industrial estate, is seeing very little improvement from this scheme. It's quite a narrow road with no street lighting and no footpath. The report refers to the applicant improving the public footpath which connects the site to the south. This is welcome, but I urge members to put in writing that it must be a fully tarmacs and accessible footpath. This would also help the children and families walking to the adjacent North Sunderland Football Club, which is another thing the football club have often complained about. On the issue of the affordable housing, I welcome that 19 affordable dwellings would be delivered as part of these proposals, which is 18% of the total housing, which is more than the 15% required. We believe there is a greater demand for social rented housing, and I would propose that the 10 or 11 three-bedroom houses that are in for discount market sale are instead put for affordable rented housing. A combination of high average house prices and low local wages makes it difficult for young people to afford these homes, even at 70% market rate. Benicia have already recognised this issue with another 18-house affordable housing site we've managed to get in the village, and they have changed their plans to make the whole site available for rent instead of a mix of rental and discounted market value housing. And finally, there is an awful lot of complaints that have come in from the caravan site. The houses, as you've seen from the plan, are very, very close to the boundary of the caravan site, and it will impact on the enjoyment of the people in their caravans. So I would ask that either the plans are rejigged slightly to move the houses further away from the caravans, or you make it very robustly sure about the method of screening between the houses and the caravans. Caravans are an important part of the local economy. We don't want to upset those people who come and spend lots of money in Seahouses during the year. And that is all I've got to say, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Guy. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Jack Conroy from Savills to speak for no more than 5 minutes, sir.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all today. My name is Jack Conroy. I'm an associate at Savills Planning, speaking on behalf of the applicant, Miller Homes. The scheme presented before you today has evolved through extensive engagement with both officers and technical consultees. There are no objections from technical consultees, and the case officer has recommended approval of the application. I do not intend to repeat the committee report in full. However, I would like to endorse the case officer's recommendation and draw attention to the key principles and benefits of this scheme. Part of the proposed development falls within an existing local plan residential site allocation, as the case officer has alluded to. Coal Authority records identify a significant number of recorded mine workings across the remaining part of the site allocation area, however. It was therefore proposed to locate the remainder of the proposed development on land south of this site allocation. The Mining Remediation Authority has been consulted and has raised no objection to the application. The application site is also located within the North Sunderland and Seahouses settlement boundary, with the neighbourhood plan seeking development to be located within such boundaries. Seahouses and North Sunderland are also identified in the local plan as a service centre, with the plan anticipating the focus of new housing development in Northumberland to be within service centres as well as main towns. Taking these factors into account, the delivery of residential land uses at the site is entirely appropriate. In line with neighbourhood plan and local plan requirements, first and future occupation of all new market homes will be restricted in perpetuity as principal residences, appreciating the significant concerns of the local population, to be secured, of course, as part of a Section 106 legal agreement. The scheme will also deliver upgrade works to the existing public right-of-way, running from the site through to North Sunderland and Seahouses to promote active travel and to enhance permeability from the site, addressing feedback from highways, public rights-of-way and National Landscape Partnership officers. A new shared pedestrian and cycle connection is also proposed from the site through to Broad Road in the north to further enhance connectivity. Extensive engagement has been had with the Council's Highways Department to date, with officers concluding that the proposed development will not have a severe impact on highway safety. The Council's Highways Department therefore raises no objection to the application in front of you all today. The application will deliver 19 much-needed affordable homes across rented and discount market value tenures, whilst the overall housing mix has been revised over the course of the application following discussions with officers. The scheme delivers a range of property types, including bungalows, terraced, semi-detached and detached homes from 2 to 5 bedrooms in size, helping to provide for a variety of housing needs. Recent changes made to the housing mix, as the case officer alluded to, have further reduced the number of 4- and 5-bed properties in order to deliver more 3-bed homes. Alongside the commitments to principal residences, affordable housing and off-site public rights-of-way upgrades, the application will make financial contributions towards education, healthcare, off-site open space and coastal mitigation scheme provisions, as well as upgrading existing bus stop facilities adjacent to the site. The proposed development would secure the creation of new jobs during the construction stage, with increased local expenditure also contributing to the vitality of Seahouses and North Sunderland during both the construction and operational phases of this development. In summary, the application is acceptable in principle, and there are no objections to the application in front of you today from technical consultees. Therefore, we kindly request that you follow your officer's recommendation and grant planning permission today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, it's now your opportunity to put questions to our officers. And I would like to start the ball rolling by asking our highways officer, Guy Renner-Thompson mentioned the condition of the footpath along Broad Road. Are there any plans to upgrade the footpath, or is it to stay just as it is?
Yeah, Chair, the footpath on Broad Road heads up to the north. There's no intention of putting one to the south, and that's why we've asked the applicant to improve the public right-of-way to a level which would allow people to walk up down there.
Thank you. Councillor Georgina Hill.
Two quick ones, if I may. Just first of all, about the ecologist, seemed to be requesting more information. I didn't hear the update, if there is an update on that, and if that's still their position. And the second more important point is following what the local member said about the occupancy rate. And I think it'd be quite useful just to tie down what the agreement is, what the enforcement is. I think it's probably very difficult legally because, you know, you don't want somebody to have certain circumstances, ill health, a job opportunity or something to be unfairly penalised, but you don't want people to have loopholes. So if you could tell me about that and about how strong the current wording is and the scope for potentially later on strengthening that condition.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. Just on the ecology point first, I was aware of it. Sorry, I should have mentioned it. The consultee responses in section 4, that their final response is missing from that table. But suffice to say that we got it to a point where they were happy with the submitted information, and there are no objections subject to conditions in the section 106.
Do we have a prime occupancy condition? Which one is that?
The primary occupancy is being skewed through the 106.
Chair, if it's okay, I'd like to come in to address the second part of Councillor Hill's queries, which is about how effective the enforcement is of the prime occupancy condition, because we have heard from a councillor who is in contact with us and also the parish council with how effective that condition is. We can, with planning enforcement, it's something that we can't share all the details of, but what I can assure members of the committee is that we're very active in enforcing the primary occupancy condition. And in the particular scenario that Councillor Renner-Thompson is referencing, we are aware of some complaints that have come in both from the local member and from the parish council about concern that the prime occupancy condition hasn't been adhered to. We have investigated all of those complaints, and there is at least one that we are proceeding to take more formal enforcement action with. But as for the others, we believe that we have been shared sufficient information at this time to reassure us that that's been adhered to. And that aligns very much with what Councillor Renner-Thompson is suggesting, is that we put more in the condition. We don't think we need it in the condition. We're able to do it through really effective planning enforcement in any event.
And the wording, so does it say it's your primary occupancy? So is that the exact word? So technically you could live in the house, I know this might sound, but just to get the logical, you could be living in somewhere 10%, but this is more than you're anywhere else. And that would still be your primary occupancy. Provided, does it have to be over 50%?
Okay, so provided, Councillor Hill, you don't have another address elsewhere. So I suppose the backstory to that policy in the first instance is to stop second homeowners and having quiet coastal villages over winter periods. What we're asking the owner to demonstrate is that they don't have a principal residence elsewhere. Some people through their work can be away for quite some time, or through other choices with their lifestyle that they choose to make as well, and that's okay, provided that all of their registered affairs are to that address.
And what, just finally, because I think it's an important point, and it's quite interesting, I know we're talking about this application generally, is what is the punishment, if you like? Does it say is if you're breaching this?
So it's actually the prime occupancy, and I'm looking toward Tessa, but it is a condition which is embedded in the Section 106 agreement. So the breaches of that run differently to a breach of condition. I don't know, Tessa, if you want to explain a little bit more about how that works.
Any breaches of a Section 106 agreement, which is a deed, would be taken through the courts, and you could either get an injunction or you could sue for damages, or you would say which one was the most appropriate. But there is a Section 106 agreement, and I was just getting the precedent agreement up where we do define what a principal residence is. And obviously I can read that if people would find that useful. And that's a dwelling which is to be occupied as the sole or main residence, where the occupier spends the majority of their time there when not working away from home with their invitees and visitors from time to time, and shall not be a second home or holiday let.
If I could just add as well, because I know this is an important point, is how effective that is when it's embedded in the legal agreement. You know, these are the very few that we're aware of, and what we would say is the majority is working and we're not receiving any complaints. So it is like planning all over. The majority of our residents here are compliant with planning, but there are always going to be issues that crop up where there may be alleged breaches, which we investigate, and we're very active with it.
Thank you. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Councillor Malcolm Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. John, just a very quick question. The Suds Pond, has it got a fence around it? Didn't notice anything. I keep asking this on Suds Ponds. 2, 3, 4, 5 bedroom houses, obviously children there. You know. And I know quite often they're dry, but sometimes they could be wet, full of water.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, Councillor. I've typically wrapped up in the landscaping plan in the approved plans condition.
Elizabeth Cinnamon.
Can we ask?
Yeah. So, Chair, if it would help, as a suggestion, is that we could delegate wording, so we could add a condition to ensure that there's some low-level or low-profile fencing around the Suds area. And also just reassuring is that Suds today aren't at the depth of what they've been in the past. They tend to be very low and flat, and like you say, they're mostly dry. But there can be concerns about them, and some of them have proposals for fencing.
Well, we've
so we
also
can
been told the temperatures, you know, we're getting more temperate temperature. So,
yes.
you know, the likelihood is we're going to have increased rainfall as well.
True. So if that is something that you would like conditioned, you could propose that. Yeah.
Okay, it's proposed. Any more questions? Councillor Swinbank.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions. One was with regard to the footpath and that access to the village centre. Obviously, Seahouses is a very busy place in the summer, and to get people to walk to the village centre and back would be, or cycle would be great, rather than having to take their cars. Because so it was just to kind of explain, because I wasn't entirely clear where that route would go, and would it be a sensible direct route rather than a kind of roundabout route that people might not feel they wish to follow. So that was the first question. And the second one, there's discussion in the report about local green space and the loss of some local green space and its replacement. So could you just explain to us, please, maybe with reference to the plan?
Could we have the site plan back up?
2 seconds, because I'm not on.
Oh, right, sorry.
I've been doing other stuff. 2 seconds,
Sorry.
councillor.
Convenience.
There we go. So, in terms of the footpath, councillor, there is an existing public right-of-way which runs north to south through the site. At its southern end, it comes up between the football ground and the caravan park, and then currently opens out into the fields. It takes a straight line across the fields, and just at the north end of in the middle there, you can see where it disappears into the Castle Drive estate. So the intention, as you can see, the Suds Pond there is such that will have to be diverted around the pond, but otherwise that route is ostensibly staying the same. There is also a secondary route being proposed to put in up to the bus stop on Broad Road. So from the access road going north and then kicking out, there's an existing field access there, so that's where that would take you to, and that takes you onto the pavement by the bus stop, and pavement then all the way up to the main road at St Aidan's, or you can get in through Castle Drive estate as well. In terms of surfacing, we've had some discussions with the Public Rights of Way team and with the applicant about what that would look like. Public Rights of Way ideally want blacktop all the way through. There were concerns similar to the concerns about putting a footpath down Broad Road, about how, the urbanising effects that would have. So recent discussions have been around potential use of rolled stone instead, or maybe a compromise of so having blacktop through the built up section of the development, giving way to rolled stone to the south. The other issue that we've had with the footpath, of course, is a part of it's within the site and part of it isn't. So we can secure the improvements to the amendments to that bit within the red line boundary through planning conditions. The bit to the south, which links down to the old railway line and takes you down into North Sunderland, or down into Seahouses if you want, that would need to be secured through the 106 agreement. In terms of local green space, you are absolutely right. So just looking at the plan there, so where the access road comes in from Broad Road, and you've got those houses just to the south of the access road. That area of ground is currently designated as local green space. Nobody's entirely sure why. It looks like it may have been, it's been drawn because it includes the football pitch. It looks like it might have been proposed for an extension to the football ground, or it's just been badly drawn when it's been drafted. Nobody's entirely sure. We took a view that the amount of open space being proposed within the development was sufficient to offset the loss of the LGS. Now, they're two very different things. One is a policy tool. The other is is something we can control more easily. But our view was that actually, okay, we're losing this designated area. However, there's plenty of open space being proposed within the site. The time to address replacement LGS would be through a local plan review. It's, you know, it's nothing that can be controlled through this planning application. As I say, suffice to say that we're satisfied with what's being presented. You know, effectively outweighs the loss of that piece of land.
So are the space constraints something to do with the mine workings? That was my question really was. Is that reason we squeezed into that local green space, or is that just the design that maybe the land ownership was in the ownership of the developer and they wanted to develop it?
I mean, it's the design of the scheme that's been put in front of us, certainly, but yes, it will have been an element of that, is because they can't touch the northern part of the housing allocation. That's why they've extended into the field to the south and presumably into that LGS. But the access road comes through part of the LGS as well, and I think there's an acceptance that having this site allocated, there was an acceptance that some of that was going to go anyway, because in order to get into the site, you'd need to put a road in through part of it. So.
Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Councillor Lawrence O'Donnell.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a question for John. It was about the affordable housing allocation, and it's 18%. And in 7.13, it says that the northern part is has a minimum requirement for 15%, and the southern part 25%. And seeing as most of the development is now in the southern part, is there any way that the 18% could increase and include a couple more houses?
It's I appreciate it's one of those. It's a tricky situation where you've got an application site falling across two affordability areas. So essentially, what has been done is they've taken an average, taken a figure somewhere between the two, effectively, and presented that to us, and that has been accepted by our policy team, by our housing. Affordable housing officer. I mean, yes, you're absolutely right. More affordable housing would be better, but the 18 on offer is what we've accepted.
Thank you. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? Someone like to move a proposal? Councillor Gordon-Stewart.
Propose the officer's recommendation with the conditions set out. I've also concerns, Chair. What about the Broad Road improvement on the footpaths, which has been raised by the Parish Council and the County Councillor today? Is that something which the officers could negotiate and have discussions with the developer about?
Thank you. Is it seconded? Recommendation? Councillor Georgina Hill.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come in there?
Yes.
Is that possible, what Councillor Stewart has suggested about the footpaths at this stage?
Just giving it some thought. I think, Councillor Stewart, what you're asking for is some off-site improvements to the footways along Broad Road, which is not something that I would like to take the opportunity to put a question to our Highways Development Management Officer, Michael, who's here, because Michael probably will have looked at this through the application anyway.
Yeah, we did look at the application and the connectivity from the residential development down to the amenities in the centre of Seahouses. And the ideal route to get down to there was going through this public right-of-way, and hence the upgrading of it. It does actually link down through to the old railway line, and then subsequently down through into the residential development to the south. So we would rather pedestrians and cyclists and any other pushing buggies and the rest of them are segregated from the traffic on Broad Road, so they can go through to the amenities that way, rather than create a footway adjacent to actually Broad Road, because there was constraints with the width on there.
Okay, with that, then, Chair, I'm sure the applicant will be listening to this today and take that into consideration there. So we'll go back to the proposal from the officer and the recommendations, and hopefully people will work together outside.
Sorry to come in again. So are you withdrawing that first proposal?
In the hope that there will be some work done outside.
Thank you. And can I just double check that your next recommendation, does that include the delegated wording regarding the condition with the fencing for the suds as well? Okay, thank you. So that's the proposal that you have on the table at the moment, which we do need to be seconded. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members like to speak to that? Councillor Georgina Hill. Oh, you were seconding. Fine. Anyone like to speak to the proposal? Malcolm Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that, Gordon. I think we should be putting fences around these things. But that aside, nice to see some housing coming where we want it, where it needs to be to satisfy a local demand. And nice to see an applicant actually looking at the house types to satisfy that local demand. Also nice to see the education and the health contribution, which will only help the local infrastructure there, which is something we really need. I think I would have liked to see a bit more, but I presume the calculation came out at those figures. So, you know, so absolutely no problem with this one. Let's get it passed.
Thank you. Any more speakers? Just from the chair, I'd like to give my support to the application. I think it's good to see the local neighbourhood plan being adhered to. Obviously, this is an allocated site, although, you know, within that site, some parcels of land have been flipped. Importantly, you know, the condition of primary occupancy. You know, here we have a large village, a small town based on tourism. We want that town to function during the winter, and for that to function, we need permanent residents living there as well. So, right behind that condition. Got my support. Can I ask the proposer of the motion to sum up? Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. And I think the silence from the members here today says a lot. A beautiful part of the world, very popular part of the world, and the local member indicated the numbers of people who are residing there on a permanent basis reducing compared to London, which I thought was quite interesting. Great application. I like the house designs as well, the ones we've seen here today, so happy to go ahead with that.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, all those in favour of this recommendation?
Sorry,
With the
Chair.
conditions?
Yes, it's with the conditions which was read out at the beginning. That's part of it, yes, that you read out at the start.
That's there as well.
Yeah.
All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. That application is passed.
No, it's in.
Right, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, our second application this afternoon is for Swarland on page 69. It's the reconfiguration of the existing golf course, change of use of the 7 northernmost golf holes to accommodate up to 180 additional new static caravans lodges and the creation of a new leisure hub building with associated access, parking, drainage ponds and landscaping works. And this is at land southwest of the chalets, Percy Wood Golf Club and Country Retreat, Coast View in Swarland in Northumberland. Our Senior Planning Officer is John Sharp, and he is going to take us through this application. John, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Some updates first. Members will hopefully have had the chance to review the addendum report that was circulated a few days ago, which highlighted changes to the wording of a number of conditions since the committee report was published, together with an update on the progress of the neighbourhood plan and subsequent response from the parish council. There are 3 further updates to provide. Firstly, to note that a further 21 representations have been made since the committee report was published, all of which are reiterating existing objections and or expressing support for the parish council's further objection, which was circulated with the addendum report. Secondly, it's noted, as with the previous application, that the content of the recommendation at the top of the report does not match exactly the recommendation in section 9 of the report. So for clarity, the content in section 9 expands on the summary provided at the beginning of the report. And again, I will take you through it fully as I summarise. Finally, I'm in receipt of further information from the applicant's drainage engineers, confirming that works are currently being undertaken to support the agreement of post-planning foul water strategy for the proposed development. So this includes drainage surveys, including CCTV investigations to confirm the extent of the existing on-site drainage network. Surveys to establish the points of connection between the site and the public sewers maintained by NWL, flow monitoring to determine flow rates at each connection point, rain gauge monitoring to verify that foul flows are not combining with surface water flows, and a review of the existing foul pumping regime. Members will note that whilst both the LFA and NWL offered no objections subject to conditions, the NWL condition specifically requests additional information in respect of both foul and surface water drainage to be submitted prior to commencement of development. The works I've just described will feed into that work, into that condition, assuming the application is approved, of course. And I think it helps to show that a known issue, known issues around drainage in the area are being addressed through these proposals. So onto the presentation. As the location plan, as the chair has said, it is for the siting of an additional up to an additional 180 static caravans and lodges on land currently laid out as part of the golf course to the west of Swarland village. The change of use of the northern part of the golf course is implicit in those proposals. Also forming part of the proposals is a new purpose-built leisure hub building which is intended to replace the existing golf clubhouse on Coast View with an expanded leisure offer, including a swimming pool, gym, bar, restaurant and shop, located more centrally within the enlarged site. This is an aerial view of the site, showing the relationship with the village and the A1 just off to the right-hand side there. And the proposed site plan showing the layout of the caravan pitches, the hub building, and the suds pond down at the bottom of the site. The leisure building would be located to the west of the existing track through the site, as you can see there. They'll be separated, that track separates the existing fairways from the driving range at the bottom of the site. It's approximately 250 metres to the nearest dwellings at Springwood, Coast View and the Old Tweed Mill. The land currently used, formerly used as the driving range, would be given over to SUDS and enhanced landscaping, providing a buffer between the village and the proposed development, which would help to protect the amenity of residents and the landscape setting of the village as per Policy 2 of the Emerging Neighbourhood Plan. It is noted that the driving range land was previously subject to an application for 60 caravans, which was refused and subsequently dismissed at appeal. The applicant has clearly taken this into account in these revised proposals. So move on to the Leisure Hub building itself. These are just some CGIs and layouts of the proposed building. Floor plans, and then this roof plan. And what we have here is the equivalent at Harrison Leisure's existing site at Wild Rose, which is over in Cumbria. They've built this there. I thought it was useful to to give you an idea of how the proposed building at Percy Wood would look. The design proposed for Percy Wood is basically an updated or enhanced version of what they've built over in Cumbria. Then just some shots of the existing caravans on the site, and then indicative, but this the proposed caravans essentially would be very similar to those that are currently on the site. It would be laid out in a similar manner as well. Site photographs, these two almost linked together and just show the driving range looking down towards the village. This is from more or less the same spot, but looking north and west from the track up the fairway. So looking east again towards the village across the driving range, and then this is from the other end of the site, looking northeast from the western edge of the site. So, in summary, the principle of the proposed change of use of the 7 northernmost golf halls to accommodate up to 180 additional static caravans, and the creation of a new leisure hub building with associated access and landscaping works is considered to be acceptable in planning terms, subject to technical considerations as set out in the committee report and supplemented by the addendum report. Subject to the conditions set out in those reports and the S106 agreement as set out in section 9 of the report, which would secure a biodiversity gain plan, a financial contribution towards coastal mitigation of £18,693, and a habitat monitoring and maintenance plan and monitoring fee of £9,327. On that basis, the proposals are considered to be acceptable and as such are recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we have 2 public speakers this afternoon. We've got Parish Councillor Donna Corbyn from Newton-on-the-Moor and Swarland Parish Council, and then we have Harvey Ems, the agent, speaking in support of the application. I would like to invite Donna Corbyn to speak for no more than 5 minutes. Donna, over to you.
Good afternoon. The Parish Council rejected this application. There are 198 other objections. Imagine, and you have seen, a park-like setting of grass and mature trees, quiet, safe for the sounds of nature, a feature of this village for over 200 years and now designated in the emerging neighbourhood plan as part of the green infrastructure of the parish. Then imagine 180 static caravan units, all the infrastructure and the noise of all the people and their cars. Then come to an open grassy space near to Swarland village and imagine a massive building which at 2,416 square metres is larger than the new B&M in Alnwick. Imagine all the noise that might emanate from such a building that will have an outdoor space including terraces, swimming pool and play area. That is what this application represents. Your officer questions at 7.10 of his report whether there is justification for the scale and location of the leisure building when it is to be used just by the people at Percy Wood. Neither the size, location or its proposed uses match the local plan requirement to balance development of visitor facilities with the protection of the unique qualities of the natural and built environment which are responsible for attracting many tourists to Northumberland in the first place. Of new buildings, the plan says that they should be small scale and capable of being absorbed into the local landscape as far as possible. A building of the size proposed cannot be absorbed into the local landscape. The suggestion is that noise from the proposed leisure building will be measured only after it comes into use. That's too late. And when the quality of life of people living in Springwood and Coast View, if not the whole village, will be affected, surely contrary to the Human Rights Act. This proposal is for a major development in the open countryside. The number of units at Percy Wood already exceeds the number of houses in the village, and if increased by a further 180 units, will be about double the number of properties in the village. A village that has no public transport and no facilities open to the public, save for Nelson's Cafe between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. 6 days per week. A village that already suffers from noise and antisocial behaviour from Percy Wood. Your officer says at 7.16 of his report that it would be difficult to make an argument that there's a shortage of this type of accommodation in the county. What need is there then to extend Percy Wood Caravan Park at all? There are no tangible benefits to the village as suggested by your officer in paragraph 7.22 of his report. The age profile for the parish alone means that additional employees will come from outside the area. In order to achieve this development, it seems that it is necessary to impose 30 conditions. Some of these require consultees, particularly with regard to key issues of roads and drainage, to work with the council and the applicant to reach agreement as a precondition of the permission. This means that the application is flawed, because on the evidence submitted to you at this time, these issues have not been resolved, and those requiring third-party involvement may not be capable of being resolved. The National Planning Policy Framework provides that planning conditions should be kept to a minimum and that they should be precise and enforceable, and consequently not rely on the involvement of any third party. This is to ensure that they cannot be subject to legal challenge. The emerging neighbourhood plan has now been independently examined, and the framework allows you to take it into consideration. The independent examiner expressed the view that any development of Percy Wood should be on a small scale, given those policies and the relevant provisions of the framework and the local plan. The previous application by the applicant to site 60 caravan units on the golf course was refused on appeal in 2022. The planning inspector concluded that the proposal would harm the character and appearance of the area, including the landscape setting of Swarland, and conflict with local plan policies and the design aims of the framework in relation to the creation of high quality and beautiful places that are sympathetic to the local character and history. This conclusion applies equally to the
Thank
current
you very much,
application.
Donna. Thank you. Thank you very much for your contribution. I'd now like to invite Harvey Ems for your contribution, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. The proposal in front of you for decision has been developed over the past 12 months with full engagement of your officers through a detailed pre-application process and consideration through a planning performance agreement. The application is a detailed site-wide scheme to deliver certainty on the aspirations of the owner and clarity for the residents of Swarland. This was a point raised by residents and councillors on the previous application for the driving range site. We have noted concerns raised by Swarland residents, the parish council and other stakeholders, and closely monitored the development of the neighbourhood plan to ensure that our scheme fully aligns with emerging policy and provides the certainty for a deliverable investment strategy to ensure that Percy Woods remains a vibrant tourist facility for the future. The application in front of you today has been carefully considered and has been deliberately designed to provide a key landscape ecological buffer between the developer and the village, and includes drainage improvements which will be delivered by the owners and maintained. We're aware of concerns raised previously around drainage in the village, and we've worked with the Flood Authority and Northumbrian Water to not only provide betterment to the network in terms of holding back surface water to reduce the risk of flooding, but also provide improvements to the existing foul network. Environmental considerations at the heart of this application, both in terms of layout, by protecting and enhancing trees, but also key views and ecological features, and the scheme seeks to protect and enhance what is there for future generations to enjoy. The proposed comprehensive landscape strategy will deliver a significant biodiversity net gain of over 25% on site for everyone to enjoy. Footpaths and public rights of way through the site will not be affected. The leisure hub is an essential component of the offer to provide modern facilities on site for visitors and reduce the need to travel elsewhere. It is not intended to be a trip generator open to wider visitors. Its design is of the highest quality using robust materials, and the intention is to provide a full service facility for park residents based on a proven design and scale of building already delivered at Harrison's Wild Rose Holiday Park, which was put in the presentation earlier by your officer. The new caravans will be set within a parking setting, retaining as many trees and ecological features as possible, while providing enhanced greening on the perimeter. Walking and cycling will be promoted throughout. We note that feedback on the application refers to amendments to the scheme. These have been done, as is normally through the case, as a request of consultees, and we've done these promptly and in a transparent manner. We've worked proactively with all consultees and note there were no objections from statutory consultees, National Highways, National England, Northumbrian Water, Northumberland's own consultee panel including Local Flood Authority, Highways, Public Protection, Public Health, Public Rights of Way, Ecology, Built Heritage, Design and Archaeology. The officer report recommends approval subject to controlling conditions which have been reviewed in terms of the tests against planning conditions and Section 106 heads of terms which were agreeable to and meet planning guidance. We note the neighbourhood plan is now at an advanced stage and we welcome its preparation, having recently received the inspector's final report and modifications for endorsement. The independent report clarifies policy matters relating to Percy Wood site, and the application in front of you today is entirely consistent with the inspector's recommendations regarding the driving range buffer and wider use of the park. As noted within the case officer's addendum report, there are no policy grounds on which to reject this application. We are pleased to support the officer recommendation and welcome the opportunity to bring forward this development quickly, which will provide a much needed tourism investment and will provide up to 75 new jobs for residents in the local area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, have you any questions you'd like to put to our planning officers? Georgina Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, a couple of questions and they're related. The first speaker actually comments were really quite devastating for the case to support this, I have to say, and very factual relating to the plan. It wasn't just, you know, good strong commentary. It was really pretty damning, actually. So first of all, on the scale of the development, it's not a scientific judgment as such, but what makes you think that having double, which I think is a double, the amount of caravans and our houses in the village isn't an overdevelopment, is acceptable scale? And the second related point, if you're going to say, which I think you might be saying, but the overriding benefits outweigh that harm, which is an argument that often comes up, what benefits are there to local people? I mean, I saw this swimming pool full of people in the imagery. It would probably be about, you know, in this country, 2 hours in a year that it would be warm enough to have that amount of people. I get that local people would be able to use this leisure hub. Is it just for the people that had the caravan? And what are the benefits to local people?
So, Councillor Hill, it's a good question, and it sort of goes to the heart of, you know, this application that comes to planning committee before all of you tonight. They're never easy decisions to make, and particularly when you know that neighbouring residents are speaking very articulately in opposition to it. What I just wanted to remind you all about is what your current local plan says, because that's, for us as planners, the starting place of how we assess any planning application that comes in. And what the plan pledges is that we ensure a thriving local rural economy in Northumberland. So there are then a suite of planning policies that sit behind that statement. So the first one, for instance, is ECN 12, and that is what we call a strategic policy. So that's a key policy for rural enterprise and growth. And the relevant section of that says the growth of rural economy will be encouraged through B, within constraints, and that's when we talk about scale in a moment, but within constraints, facilitating the formation, growth, and upscaling of businesses in rural locations. And that's what this application is about, and that's why we're supporting it, because we're saying that it does meet this policy requirement because it is facilitating the formation, growth, and upscaling of a business that already exists. We also have policies that then go on, ECN 13, again, it's another strategic policy, and that is about meeting rural employment needs. And that's a recognition of trying to keep residents in rural areas and encouraging our young people to stay in Northumberland and take up jobs that are available in our growing rural economy. And that's what the applicant is demonstrating, is the leisure hub is going to create, the leisure hub and the expansion of the park is going to create those much needed jobs. I could go on. The final policy that one of the speakers talked about is ECN 15, and that's about tourism and visitor development. And the key one there is about developing visitor accommodation, is that we do like to try and encourage the redevelopment of buildings that are there, that are on the site. This is obviously a very large, and it's a new building. But again, we do it all through the lens of making sure that it doesn't have any harmful impacts on the landscape and so forth. And so then this takes us on to what are the things, where are the harm, where does the harm arise? An awful lot of the harm has been mitigated, and we've got some of our technical consultees here that can talk about it. But there is a landscape harm to it, a potential landscape harm. And again, we have appraised that, and we have come to we accept the conclusion that's come to, which is that there is minimal close landscape harm and no long-range landscape harm. But that is something for members that they may want to discuss. But really what I'm trying to persuade members is that all of our policies are there to help rural businesses scale up and create more employment opportunities in the rural areas of the county.
But it doesn't say that if it's, and you know, we get that with tourism, we don't have, you know, many industries and so on. Industry, we need tourism is key to Northumberland, we get that, and jobs, but it doesn't say anything goes. And it does use the word there are legitimate constraints. And as the speaker said,
Yeah.
don't want to lose, build,
Yeah.
build, expand, to, and then we
Correct.
lose what's great about
Yeah.
Northumberland. So there are constraints. It isn't anything goes. It isn't
Correct.
a strict policy.
That's
you have
right.
to agree with everything.
Yeah, Councillor Hill, that's where it says within constraints. And so you have to think about what the constraints and the harms are. We have looked at those and we are concluding that they're limited and that the policies far outweigh some of the constraints that may arise, including the scale and the size. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hill's questions were,
Yeah.
what was the public benefit to the residents of Swarland?
Okay. So the public benefit is the employment and the jobs that are going to be coming forward.
I think you were talking about the leisure facility. Will the residents of Swarland be able to use this leisure facility?
Okay, so at present, I understand that is not, this is for the expansion of the caravan park, because very often it is the case that people come and they use the facilities like the leisure hub, and then beyond that, they're out there accessing our tourist locations and spending their money there. And in fact, we heard that from our first speaker on the earlier application today.
Thank you. Councillor Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Just with regards to the site itself, obviously, previously, part of this was a golf course. Is the other part that is going to remain a golf course earmarked for future development for another 180 additional static cat? Because obviously golf courses aren't as profitable as they used to be, where you can make good money siting 180 caravans in Northumberland because it's a beautiful place to come and visit. But I do worry that if you have another 180 that are really successful, we could end up with another 180, and actually 180 when you look at rural communities and the fabric and the reason why people want to live there, that'll completely change if it becomes a destination rather than a place where people also want to live. So I do have concerns about that. So how do we put it back in the box if it does become a tourist destination rather than a place where people want to live?
So just to make sure I've got this question right, Councillor Ball. So I think the first aspect of it is your concern is about the additional holes of the golf course that are remaining as golf course. So I know this is a difficult message to convey, but members, you're looking at the application that's before you today. What the promoters, the owners of this site are saying through their economic impact report is that in order to sustain the business, and the drop off of interest in golf vacations, that's been their justification for the development on part of the golf course, and we've accepted that. That they are saying that the additional part of their golf course remains viable for the business to run. So they would have to come forward with some justification to be able to override that. And also, I was just going to ask John to touch on the allocations that are coming through on the neighbourhood plan, and whether that also gives another layer of protection to those additional holes of the golf course that aren't going to be developed on. John, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to cover that, thank you. You're absolutely right. So, any future proposals would have to be assessed as a future planning application, and we would look at that point, in its own right, and the impact it would have potentially cumulatively, given what's already there. Essentially, what we're saying here is that we find this to be acceptable. That's not to say that we would necessarily find the same again on the other bit of the golf course in 2, 5, 10 years' time to be acceptable as well. The neighbourhood plan is on the cusp of being made. It's through examination. It's going to referendum in due course. The policies that were in that plan, as addressed in the addendum report, have been tweaked, have been amended. One of them has been removed in its entirety, but there is still a level of protection for the for the wider site, the blue and green infrastructure policy specifically. How we've addressed that in this particular instance is that the county ecologist was satisfied with the proposals that have been made, subject to conditions and Section 106 as described earlier. Whether that would be the case for any future application, as I say, it would be entirely up for debate at that point.
Yes, can I ask, does this area come under the Dark Skies project at all?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Councillor Malcolm Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. 2 questions, John. You can guess my first one. There's another suds pond here. And even more reason if this goes ahead, because there'll be more children on this one. But second one seems to be a lot of concern about noise from the entertainment hub or leisure hub or whatever you call it. Could that not be moved away a little bit from the village to help with that noise pollution?
So, Chair, it wouldn't be possible to suggest that we move it, because everything is tested on a fixed plan and location. So all our consultations...
Let me change that then, Liz. Was it looked at to possibly move it when the plans were considered?
I think it's possibly unlikely. It hasn't been changed while we have considered it, but that would have been because our consultees, particularly to deal with noise and proximity to amenity, didn't raise any objections. And it would have been, had we received an objection, that might have triggered a discussion to say, could you move it? What we could do is perhaps look at operating conditions so that noise is restricted in the evenings and so forth, so that if there are events, the noise isn't carrying through into the neighbouring village.
Question from Daniel Carr.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the noise, I think this is one of the biggest impacts that residents will feel. Was there any look at noise mitigation by planting more trees? Although I know that that will be years down the line until that actually comes into effect, but was this considered as part of the ecology report?
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, so the mitigation of the site, that landscaping and ecological mitigation buffer at the eastern end of the site, next to the village, is in part trying to achieve that purpose. So the existing planting around that part of the site is intended to be strengthened. That will be captured in the landscaping plans that go into the approved planning condition.
So just to confirm, there will be a barrier in place for trees to suppress the noise from the site?
It's soft landscaping, so trees, bushes, etc., etc. There's no no acoustic barrier being proposed at this time. There is a condition, just to come back on noise, Councillor Robinson there is a condition to secure a noise report. We are proposing to give the operator 3 months to bring that building into operation. They will then need to submit a noise report to show that the noise levels are below a set number of decibels. If it isn't, then they would have to go away and do something about it. Look at put in mitigation, additional mitigation. Basically, our public protection team is satisfied with the the level of noise that can be achieved. If it subsequently turns out that they can't, then they'll need to go and do something about it.
Sorry, Chair, just to go back on that. So could the report be amended so that particular type of tree is put in place in the future or during the development of the site to protect the residents?
There will be a, just scroll through to see if I can find it. There will be a landscaping plan as part of the condition to the approved plan, so that will detail what is being proposed in terms of planting, landscape planting, trees, shrubs, etc., etc. As I say.
Just so I've got it clear, that would be looked at potentially to provide the residents protection by using a particular type of tree that would mitigate noise from the site.
So what we could do, Councillor Carr, is you could propose to amend the condition, which is normally an ecology landscaping condition, to ask for it to introduce planting mitigation that also has got acoustic benefits, and then that would be woven in to the condition, and it would have to be discharged by the applicant. So we could try and weave that in specifically so that the planting does provide some acoustic protection as well. And just to add, having a look at the consultees, both public protection and public health have been consulted on the application, and they both offer no objection. Public protection subject to their condition about the noise mitigation, because of course that is something that can be resolved once it's up and operating, and there will also be licensing potentially as well that would also have conditions on that too.
May I include that in the report as an amendment?
Which bit? The bit about the trees? Yeah, so once we have a proposal, you can then add in an amendment to the condition, Councillor Carr.
Councillor Martin Swinbank.
Thank you, Chair. I recall that a much smaller application came forward a few years ago, so I was sat on the planning committee that dealt with that, and it came forward for approval, and ultimately it was turned down at appeal, which was, I think, for 60 units, which was much closer to the village, but it was in the same kind of location. So this has come forward, obviously much bigger, slightly further away, has a large hub, swimming pool, etc., just a little bit further up the hill. So I'm wondering whether planning officers could kind of explain to us how different this is, because character and appearance of the area was raised in that, apparently in that appeal report, and how this differs, because although it's slightly further away, it is a much larger application, and it's pretty much in the same place the original, the previous one was.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. The proposals, obviously, I mentioned in my presentation there that the applicant's clearly taken that appeal decision into account. They've moved the proposed development away from that area, such that that area is just going to be landscaping and drainage, essentially. So yes, you've seen in the pictures there, looking up the fairway, there's existing trees there that the hub building will effectively sit in behind. So yes, you will see a building. The proposals they will bring change. You will be able to see a building. The intention is through the landscaping plans that would be mitigated in as far as possible. And just to reiterate that in this particular example, in this particular application, that building is going to be approximately 250 metres away from the edge of the village, as compared to the previous application, it was literally right next door. So, in terms of character and appearance, yeah, there will be change. That's inevitable. Assuming that the application is approved, it's how we mitigate that.
Councillor Benyon.
Thanks, Chair. We've heard, and I'm not sure if Liz or John can answer this question, and I'm not actually sure how to ask it. Yeah. We keep hearing that this proposal will help the business thrive and keep existing. and they're using the golf course. Has anything been done over the last few years to improve or work on the golf course? It used to have a thriving membership, and I'm not sure how many sort of members are there now. Or is the golf course being purposely sort of run down so they could put this proposal in?
The case that has been presented to us is one of a business that has been cross-subsidised for the last several years, basically because they're not making the money on the golf course anymore. So the holiday park side of the business has been cross-subsidising. So the justification put to us in their economic report is that this is no longer sustainable. We need to do something about it. And the view clearly from the applicant is that if we reduce the size of the golf course, put more, add in more caravans, of course, but what remains of the golf course would then be sustainable.
Chair, if I could come back, which is my point. Has the golf course not been looked after enough to keep the members there so that it can come round to this? And I'm trying to say so I don't end up in court or something.
I absolutely. I can't. I can't answer that. It may well be an opinion, but and it's certainly something that's been raised in a number of the objections that have that have been submitted to the application. I couldn't possibly comment.
Listenerman.
Yeah, so Chair, just on that point, I mean, we don't, the applicant submitted all their information to us, and that's for you members to take on board tonight, set that against all of the policies that I've taken you through. That's where your decision lies, not about how they've managed the club in advance of submitting the application. We have been out on site. They do manage their landscape well. There's a lot of investment coming forward into it as well that supports this rural business grow and scale up. And that's really the matter that's before members tonight, is where do you sit with that ask, because that's what's come in from the applicant.
Thank you. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? No more questions? Could I have a proposal? Daniel Carr.
I propose that the proposals go ahead, subject to my condition that we do what we can to protect the residents, but by tree mitigation, with a particular tree that does mitigate noise.
Is that seconded? Councillor Malcolm Robinson seconds that. Debate, ladies and gentlemen, debate. Georgina Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I can't support this application. The proposer has mentioned noise, and I think noise is a ground, another ground. I don't think it's the only one. It's maybe not even the strongest one. We haven't even touched on highway safety or pressure and utilities, water resource, etc., etc. But I just can't get round the fact that the sheer size of this, as mentioned, double the one that was rejected, and this buffer between it is a totally inadequate mitigation. And residents at Swarland are expected to have this huge development with no clear benefits to them and substantial harm. Clearly goes against the local plan. The merging neighbourhood plan be unacceptable loss of the character and appearance of what is a lovely village. And I just think, of course, we support tourism and jobs, but there is always some planning other considerations as well. And I said it would have to be, you'd only, your argument, I think, would only have to be if it's a very strict thing. Anything that potentially could be argued for tourism means you do whatever, and that would be nonsense policy. None of us would agree to that. I think this is, for me, a really easy one. Sometimes you're listening to this harm benefit and you're just tipping over, I just think the harm outweighs the benefit outweighs the harm. For me, on the scale, the harm way outweighs the benefit, and I would urge to reject this.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, I speak to you this afternoon not as the chair, but as the local member for this patch. I've represented Swarland for 33 years. I'm very fond of it. Lovely, sleepy little village. Unique settlement founded for some families from the Jarrah Marchers. And yes, I've seen it grow. Quite a lot of development in the village, but still, it's a lovely, sleepy little village. And I feel this proposal today is overwhelming. And I would like to reject the application on cumulative impact grounds and scale. You know, we've got a 40% increase in the business. Now, I take on board the officer's line that the local plan says we should look after rural businesses. But you know, it's my job too, to look after the people of Swarland, represent them. And you know, over the years, the caravan park has grown substantially. And yes, it's resulted in problems. You know, it began life as a sleepy little caravan park with a few caravans operated by the Del Grecos in a woodland scene. And I remember that time very well. We had site visits there, and I thought, well, isn't this fantastic? But over the years, the environment has changed. The trees have been cut down. Obviously, we've got 400 plus lodges, caravans there at the moment. And of course, when it rains, it's no longer raining on a wood. It's raining on roads and lodges. And of course, the water rushes down the hill. And in the past, we've ended up with terrible problems down at the old Tweed Mill site where, you know, flooding has been very bad. And yes, it's marvellous to hear that the Harrisons are working on a drainage solution now, but the problem is still there. We've got an area of lodges and tarmac where the water no longer sinks into the ground, but it actually runs down the tarmac. And you know, the other services that our villagers in Swarland want are sewerage, water. And of course, when was it? Yes, Easter Saturday lunch, I had some of the caravanners come to lunch at the Northumberland Arms. And, you know, how are things? Well, we didn't have any water today because everybody was filling up their hot tubs. And that's before we build another 180. But, you know, there have also been problems down in Swarland where sewerage has come out of the manhole covers. And, you know, it's not fair where a nice, sleepy little village, and yes, if the caravan park was totally self-contained and didn't give us all these problems in Swarland, it would be fine. But it's such a huge neighbour, a caravan park of this side, and it's likely to be even bigger in the future. You know, 400 now, over 800 after these caravans are built. It's just the scale. It's too big. And as Councillor Swinburne commented, you know, we had a similar application about 2 years ago for 60 caravans. And of course, the committee then decided to turn it down, went to appeal, and the appeal was dismissed. The examiner upheld our decision. And, you know, while I totally respect John Sharp saying that the applicant has looked at that application and tried to amend it, yes, he's amended it, but he's almost, you know, times by 3 the number of caravans he wants to build. It's just overwhelming. It's just too big. And, you know, in Swarland itself, we don't have a lot of services. We haven't got a shop, a church. We've got no public transport. We really struggle, and we're just at the stage now where we're getting the county council to actually do something about the roads after years and years and years. We've got a lot of unadopted roads. But yes, one of the main problems I have, which Donna Corbyn commented on, was the leisure building. You know, the leisure building with all those people there enjoying themselves and the noise they're going to generate. It's not fair to have a building of that sort of size right next to the lovely little village of Swarland. It's just not fair. You know, it's always been my worst nightmare that one day I might get an application for a Disneyland, and I feel that's what I've got in front of me today. A huge accommodation need and a very large leisure hub, which I think is going to generate an awful lot of noise. Members of the committee, I would like you to refuse this application. Thank you. Caroline Ball.
I would like to second that as well, Councillor Vaughan. So, as I was saying before, the fabric of this area will completely change with a development of this scale. The previous application we looked at for housing, there's conditions on that about they're not allowed to be second homes, they're not allowed to be this, that and the other, because of the impact having holiday homes and villages that are dead in the winter. How will this have an impact on them neighbouring parishes? Because actually the infrastructure is not there to support it. Is when you look at 100, if it was 180 houses, we would be talking about where would people be buying the shopping? Where would they be going for leisure and everything else? And there is that wider impact on the fabric of the communities. So I don't see, yes, there is going to be extra jobs, but actually that wider social impact on them communities, I think will be damaging beyond repair. And I don't think once you've let everything out the box that you can actually move it back either. And I do worry that we look at places like Cornwall where the overdevelopment of tourism is, it's the reasons people go to visit there has been completely destroyed. It's lost its identity, it's lost its beauty in many ways. So I do have concerns that 180, as you say, this is step 3 or 4 that we've seen, and I just really worry that it ends up being a theme park rather than the reason why people come to visit Northumberland. And I think the detriment to the wider community and the people in the parishes, once it's out the box, there's no way that you can put it back either. So I would follow your recommendation and think that it should be refused. Thank you.
Malcolm Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm of the opposite opinion, actually, on this. I hope we hear the same sort of arguments when the government come along and say you've got to build 5,000 houses there where nobody wants them. I hope we hear that mind of certain members. But I have to agree with Liz. We've got a local plan. The local plan says we will enable our businesses to expand as part of our increase in job offer. And that's to benefit everybody. And when you're talking about tourism, and we have a particular bent towards tourism in this area, when you're looking at tourism, those tourists, those people that come to those things expect modern facilities. They expect, you know, they expect a swimming pool, they expect entertainment, they expect this, that and the other now. So the people that have it, and this is business, I no way think this is a material concern, but somebody's got to make a judgment call. To put that building up, to satisfy that demand, we need X amount of caravans. And I think that's what's happened here. But we're not when we're talking about this development next to the village, We're not talking about a blast furnace. You know, we're not talking about open cast. We're talking about a caravan park. It might not be fantastic, but it's not really detrimental considering the other things that could have gone in there. So I'm kind of like, I'm with the proposal. It's, and you know, I'm just speaking my mind as I'm want to do. So I'm with the proposal.
Any more debate, ladies and gentlemen?
Just on my proposal, Chair, is that even if you do reject this application, they always come back in some form of capacity. And that's the problem, is you can have all these objectors, and there was a lot, one of the largest I've ever seen actually. But they always come back in some form, and in my opinion, they get accepted at some point in time down the line, no matter how many years. And all you can do is find mitigations to protect the local area and the residents in particular. And from that picture as well we saw on the board there, you can see straight away that noise definitely is going to be the biggest factor. If I was living in the proximity of that area, it would be my biggest gripe. And I would think that councillors would look and think, let's put something in place now to protect the residents locally from that main issue. And that's the reason I put my proposal forward. Although I do agree with yourself, Councillor Thorne, is that, you know, we should reject the application outright. I do think that it will come back in some form, and all we can do now is to put policies and recommendations in place to protect what is there now and the residents that are there now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Councillor Carr has closed the debate, moving the motion. All those in favour of the motion, would you like to raise your hands?
3.
All those against?
Yeah.
So that motion is rejected. Would someone like to move another motion? Councillor Hill.
I'd like to move rejection of the application on grounds. My head's still aching about looking at roads and roundabouts earlier. Overdevelopment, scale of the development, loss of character, and amenity, loss of open spaces, lack of benefit to the local village. Happy to delegate the precise wording for legal niceties, but that's the gist as the chair and the first speaker outlined. I agree with everything that's been said on that. So I would propose rejection of this.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Seconded. All those in favour of that refusal? Sorry.
Chair, if you don't mind,
Yes.
and I know this is difficult, but I did want to just come back to Councillor Hill on how we write the reason for refusal, because remember, members, you've got to tie that in with your policies. So what do your policies say that we haven't got right in the report, and that you think that you could read it differently or add weight to it differently? So I think what you're saying, Councillor Hill, is that it's contrary to policy ECN 12, which is the strategy for rural economic growth, because the growth and upscaling of the business in the rural location doesn't comply with the constraints, because this is the within constraints point. That's the point, within constraints. And I think this is what you're saying. You've got to look at other things, the cumulative impact, the landscape harm, those sorts of things. So it's contrary to that policy, and the constraints are the landscape harm. What else did you say? Overdevelopment and character of the village of Swarland.
Yeah, good. All those in favour of that refusal? All those against? So that abstentions one. So that application is refused. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a little comfort break. Just 5 Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we're going to deal with our final item this afternoon. So this is on page 105, and this is the construction of Blythe Relief Road, comprising approximately 1.3 kilometres of new dual carriageway and an upgrade of approximately 3.2 kilometres of single carriageway to dual carriageway between the A192 Seahouses roundabout and the A193 Links Road roundabout, and provision of approximately 1 kilometre of single carriageway between the connection between Chase Farm Drive and Ogle Drive, including a new railway overbridge, a new roundabout and highway connections, realignments, repositioning of the sports pitch and associated highways, junction, access, crossing, landscaping, boundary treatments, noise barriers, earthworks, infrastructure, lighting, drainage, demolition, engineering, construction, and other ancillary works, and provision of off-site biodiversity net gain. And this is land and buildings on the east side of Newcastle Road, Blythe in Northumberland. And our planning consultant, Gordon Halliday, is going to take us through this application. Gordon, over to you, sir.
Okay, Chairman, thank you. The bad news is that the presentation is even longer than the title of the application. A long application title. A couple of updates. In the report, it talks about Natural England's final observations being awaited. It actually says what they were likely to be. We eventually did get them, and they're raising no objections, subject to the imposition of condition number 21. And similar to John's applications, the recommendation on page 1 should state granted permission subject to conditions for consistency with the recommendation at the end of the report. Okay, some background on this one. What's the background? What's the purpose behind this planning application? So journey time traffic issues into and out of Blythe, with severe traffic queuing on Coupon Road, and to a lesser extent the A1061, and roads operating beyond their effective capacity, particularly at peak times. Congestion, in other words, simple term, that Blythe already suffers from congestion in its roads, and this, one of the objectives of the scheme is to ease this congestion. Secondly, though, the routes out of Blythe and into Blythe don't provide the opportunity for the growth and are likely to constrain the future growth of Blythe, its economic development and bus service reliability. The Northumberland line has helped. It's provided regional connectivity with the stations at Bebbside and Newsham, but it doesn't address the majority of trips and east-west flows across and into Blythe. As you saw today, those of you on the tour, Newsham and Bebbside are both located on the western side of Blythe. Lots of the main economic activity in Blythe comes along the seashore, the coast, and the industrial areas around the port. It's been a long time in the making. An appraisal of options was carried out 10 years ago, and it identified 5 potential east-west routes for further investigation. Subsequently, some of these routes, including what was the preferred route at that time, were discounted because of problems with land acquisition, cost, or environmental issues. And this has led to the identification of the preferred option, which is the subject of the planning application, which comprises 2 elements: a new Chase Farm link road and the upgrading of the A1061 and the new link to the A189. So that's the location. As I've just said, it covers 2 distinct areas. To the north, it's the Chase Farm link site within Blythe, and the southern part is the connection from the Three Horses roundabout across open field to the Portland roundabout, and then along the A1061 round the bottom of South Newsham, over the railway line and along to the roundabout at the coast. So let's deal with the two areas separately. So if we talk about this northern area, the Chase Farm site, it's about 8.6 hectares, so that's the area between the red line, the red line boundary, and it's located between Chase Farm Drive at the western end, the roundabout that you can see at that western end of the built-up area, and Ogle Drive, which is located at the eastern end, beyond the football pitch and the playing fields. The area surrounding the Chase Farm site is predominantly urban. It's got residential housing, it's got sporting facilities, it's got businesses, it's got parks, and it's got recreational areas in close proximity. At the western end, the proposed road will connect with the existing roundabout at Chase Farm Drive. That roundabout will be upgraded to adoptable standards. As we saw this morning, it's not currently at adoptable standards. And then if you travel eastwards, a new single carriageway, approximately 1 kilometre in length, will follow through the northern areas, reaching the northern part of Isabella Heap Nature Reserve, between residential areas in Coupon to the north and Newsham to the south. And as we saw on the site visit this morning, some of these residential areas are quite narrow between the houses to the north and south. Some of them open out and covered some informal green area, green land, and then further west, it's a little bit more open in the route. The Chase Farm site at the western end will connect to the existing single carriageway at Ogle Drive. So we're talking about the building of a single carriageway road connecting with single carriageway roads at either end. The Isabella footbridge at the eastern end will be removed, and the old railway cutting will be partially infilled. Grass verges, new footways, cycleways and shared use paths will run parallel to the new single carriageway and will tie into existing footpaths and paths along the route. It will be a bus route, and indicative bus stops have been shown on the submitted plans. There will be street lighting along the entire route. It will be installed as part of the proposed scheme. Various crossings, new crossings, will be provided to get from one side of the road to the other safely. There will be alterations to an installation of drainage systems to accommodate the new road, including the provision of several attenuation basins. And you can see the main attenuation basins marked in blue on this plan. So there's 3 of them in these green areas on the northern side of the road at the eastern end, and then there is an attenuation basin on what is part of the football field at the western end. Just to comment on that, the football pitch will still be on that parcel of green land, but it will be moved to the south. It will also be upgraded. Currently, it suffers a lot from waterlogging, so it will be upgraded to Sport England standards with improved drainage. And then there are landscape proposals along the new road to help to mitigate the amenity issues. So that's the Chase Farm link. Some photographs. That's the roundabout, where members of the committee saw this morning. That would be upgraded to adoptable standards, and then the sort of road goes in between the housing ahead of that roundabout. That's we walked along past these houses on the right-hand side this morning, along Holborn Avenue, and that's what it looks like at the present time. That's the eastern end of the proposed Chase Farm link. What we saw this morning was that that's the sort of narrowest part between housing to the north and south of the scheme. That's where we also stood this morning, looking east from Hedgehope Walk across that area of open green land. So the road would travel across that land, and part of that land on the northern part would be used for the flood attenuation basin. We stopped at Tynedale Drive. The top of Tynedale Drive, there would be a new roundabout created, and that's looking east from Tynedale Drive. As I said, the sort of area to the east, it sort of opens out, so you've got a wider tract of land in which to create the road, and the sort of road goes quite hard up against these that's the foot of the gardens, quite long gardens of the houses to the north there, and the sort of trees in the background, and on the right hand side are the edge of the Isabella Heap. It cuts slightly into the Isabella Heap area, but the vast majority of the Isabella Heap Nature Reserve and walking area, landscaped area, tree planted area is protected and is not affected. That's the western end of the proposed Chase Farm link. So we sort of stood in the middle of the playing field. If we'd walked up to the end of the playing field, that's where we actually would have seen. So that's the sort of western end where it's you've got housing behind the trees on the left-hand side, and you've got the Isabella Heap on the right-hand side. That's the Isabella Bridge, which will be removed as part of this scheme. And as I said, the sort of cutting would be infilled. It's in poor condition and doesn't allow disabled access, and it would be removed as part of the scheme with new footway provision provided in its place. And that's the Blythe Rangers football pitch, which would be upgraded and slightly relocated, well, in this direction. And that's Ogle Drive in the background that you can see where the bus parked this morning. So that's the sort of northern section of the proposals. The Chase Farm link, the objectives of that really are to assist. Won't solve the problems of Coupon Road, but will assist. It will provide a new alternative entrance into Blythe, so it will help to disperse some of the traffic that currently goes down the Coupon Road beyond the Asda roundabout, and it will help to open up that part of Blythe. The A1061 objectives there are probably slightly different. A61 is probably the sort of main route in and out, certainly to the south of Blythe, connecting into the industrial areas, the industrial heart and the port of Blythe. And the proposals here are basically to upgrade that whole section of road. So at the western end, we've got a new section of dual carriageway to be constructed, about 1.3 kilometres in length. It will be located on land that is currently used for agricultural purposes and will connect the A189 Three Horseshoes grade separated junction and the existing A1061 Portland Wine roundabout. So it will go across agricultural fields. Between the Portland Wine roundabout and the A193, it's 2.8 kilometres long. It's currently single carriageway road, and it will be upgraded along its entire length to dual carriageway through road widening to the north of the existing road between the A193 and the Blythe Town Football Club, where we parked on Sandringham Drive this morning. And then the new dualling of the road from that point to the Portland Wine roundabout, including over the Northumberland line, from that point, the dualling is to the south of the road. The Portland Wine roundabout will be upgraded to accommodate the new road. The current single carriageway overbridge at Newsham Station will be dualled. In an ideal world, infrastructure projects would be planned, so that could have been dualled as part of the Newsham Station proposal. Unfortunately, planning doesn't always work in an ideal world, but the proposal is to dual that single carriageway overbridge by constructing a second carriageway to the south of the existing carriageway, adjacent to it. It will, to all intents and purposes, it will end up being a single bridge with a dual bridge. There'll be a number of signalised junctions upgraded at Sandringham Drive, Farm Drive, Albatross Way and Fulmer Drive. These are all to the east of Newsham Station. And some of them are signalised at the moment, but they'll be upgraded in order to provide ready access in and out of the new dual carriageway. And then you've got new segregated cycleways and footways to be tied into the existing cycleways and footways along the length of the road. Is that the wrong? No, I've done that. The section, the sort of new section between the Three Horseshoes roundabout and the Portland Wine roundabout, the section over the agricultural land will not be lit. The section between the Portland Wine roundabout and Newsham Station, there'll be a 2-metre high noise barrier constructed along there, 791 metres long, and it will be provided adjacent to the A1061. It will be provided on the southern side of the hedge row and trees that we saw along the northern part of the existing carriageway. So you'll have the housing, you'll have the sort of road and pathways, you'll then have the existing planting unaffected, which is currently there, and then the noise barrier would be constructed on the road side of that hedging. And then you've got the whole of the new, the sort of new dual carriageway road between Three Horse, as I said before, that's a duplication, will not be lit. So some photographs. That's the Portland Wine roundabout looking west, so that there'll be there'll be a new arm taken off it in order to provide the section of dualling across the agricultural land. And as we saw this morning, it will be slightly repositioned further west and upgraded. That's the area that I talked about. Noise impacts at the housing to be mitigated by the acoustic barrier. So you've sort of got the housing, you've got the car access, a bit of greenery. You've then got quite mature hedging and tree planting. That would all be retained, and the noise barrier would go on the road side of that section of road. There you've got the Newsham Station overbridge. Currently single carriageway that would be dualled as part of the scheme. We stopped in the football ground car park just at the bottom of Sandringham Drive, and we walked down and we saw this view looking east with the housing to the north, the existing open land, the existing carriageway, and the new carriageway in this section would be built on this side of the road. So hence reducing the width of that area of informal open land. And then the western extremity of the road is at the A193 Links Road roundabout, and that's looking back along the A1061. So just to conclude, it's EIA development, and the submissions in the environmental statement and proposed mitigations have been assessed and taken into account in the consideration of the proposals. It's intended to relieve traffic congestion in Blythe, and it's intended to improve connections in and out of the town. The original preferred route from the earlier options appraisal cannot be progressed because of land ownership cost and environmental issues. The proposed scheme is based on a preliminary design, as detailed design is ongoing, and any changes that result will need to be considered in due course. So just to maybe elaborate on that, you're dealing with a full planning application, you're dealing with a full environmental statement, huge numbers of, you'll have seen the conditions, 160 odd plans have been submitted for approval, something like 20 separate documents, and in the ES, which is one of the documents, has about 30 or 40 component parts. So a huge amount of information has been put into the preliminary design, but it's still a preliminary design, and certain aspects are being reserved, and so it's a heavily conditioned recommendation of approval. You've got lots of conditions from the lead local flood authority, you've got lots of conditions from Highways Development Management, you've got lots of conditions from Ecology, Natural England, Northumbrian Water, etc., because there could be changes at the detailed design stage, but not to the principle of the development, so that the key elements of the development, you know, whether it's dualed, whether it's, you know, it's red line boundaries, these sort of things are not for change. So the principle of the scheme is supported by the Northumberland local plan. You sort of heard Liz earlier talking about the importance of the local plan in considering planning applications in relation to the Swarland application. So it's supported by policies STP1 and TRA3 in the Northumberland local plan, subject to compliance with other plan policies. What the local plan doesn't do is define a route for the Chase Farm link, for example. It talks about a Blythe Relief Road scheme as being in accordance with the principles of the local plan, but it doesn't actually, you know, in previous local plans that Blythe Valley produced many, many years ago, safeguarded that Chase Farm link area, because you saw today that it was quite clearly being left open for future road development. Economic benefits of the scheme weigh in favour of granting planning permission. So I've talked about these, you know, to help the sort of the continued regeneration of Blythe. Blythe being one of the key settlements for economic regeneration in Northumberland, in southeast Northumberland. There is limited incursion in the green belt. One of the constraints on the development here has been the fact that the land to the south of the A1061 is green belt. So what the applicants have had to do is limit incursion in the green belt in order to be compliant with green belt policy. And we are satisfied that they've done that. There are clearly impacts on residential amenity, both during construction and during the operational phases. But these are offset by a variety of mitigations and planning conditions. There were originally objections on ecological grounds by the county ecologists and concerns raised by Natural England, but these have been addressed by the submission of further information and clarification, and also the recommendation of detailed planning conditions. There is less than substantial harm to the settings and significance of two listed buildings, Low Horton Farmhouse and Newsham South Farmstead, and these need to be weighed against the public benefits. As the report says, it's harm at the lower end of the scale, and arguably these farmhouses are perhaps not the most significant listed buildings in the area. LLFA, Environment Agency and Northumbria Water have all raised no objections, but subject to very detailed planning conditions. The loss of agricultural land, there's 1.6 hectares of best and most versatile going to be lost, so that needs to be weighed against the benefits of the scheme. It's a policy disbenefit. And then there's a wide range of other considerations that have been assessed both in the submissions of the applicant and in the officer report. Climate change, landscape, visual impact, open space, rights of way have all been assessed and found to be acceptable up to a point. The objections concerned by members of the public, there are lots of objections you'll have seen, including many local residents, and these have been considered in the appraisal of the scheme, and at suitable points in the officer report they are referenced. But on balance, at the end of the day, the officer report concludes that there are very, very substantial economic, transport and public benefits associated with this proposed scheme, and that these benefits outweigh the harm, and the recommendation is therefore to grant planning permission subject to the imposition of planning conditions. Sorry, that was a bit long-winded, Chairman.
Not at all. Thank you, Gordon. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, we now come to our public speaking slot. We've got two speakers objecting to the application. I don't think there's any longer a local member speaking. He's not here. And then we've got Stuart McNaughton from Northumberland County Council speaking in favour of the application. So if I could invite Steve Sharp, I think, who's going to speak first, and then Professor Martin Barwood, who's going to support him. Gentlemen, the floor is yours. You've got 5 minutes.
I've worked for civil engineering consultants and commuted from Blythe to Newcastle for most of my working life. The confusing proposed so-called Blythe Relief Road is a multi-million waste of money which has minimum benefit, especially for centre to North Blythe. The A1061 railway flyover, train travel and home working has greatly reduced traffic problems. I understand this relief road proposal has been given a benefit-cost ratio of under 2, barely acceptable and by far the worst of previous Blythe relief road options. Queuing lanes to the roundabouts at each end, bus lay-bys and improved cycle paths is all that's needed to improve the A1061. This proposal could be undertaken for under 10% of the proposed budget with less noise, disruption and general disturbance. I suggest this workable solution or only the flyover west be constructed, or better innovative proposals are made. Over to Martin. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, 4 minutes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a resident living close to the seafront, and I represent other residents who are here today. We are directly affected by the dualling of the A1061, and we support the need for investment in Blythe, including improvements in the transport infrastructure. But we object to this proposal because there is insufficient robust evidence to justify the scale of the project relative to the harm that it will cause. The first point I want to make in your committee report is that the modelling is out of date. You've modelled up to 2023. This is a time supported by the Department for Transport where there's a heavy preference for private transport by car and a lack of confidence in public transport. It also doesn't include the opening and the effect on the transport network of the Northumberland line, which has most recently been completed just a few weeks ago. So your data overestimate the nature of the problem and they do not accurately reflect the travel behaviours at the current time. There's also no indication in the submission that the travel behaviours will be changed by the change in the network. It's assumed that that will take place. That hasn't been measured or evidenced. But even if you believe the modelling, there's insufficient evidence to support that the aims of the proposal will be met. And the congestion on the Coupon Road area is really, really important. The environmental statement, tables 1432 and 1433, articulate the case for basically what will happen 1 year after the scheme has been introduced and 15 years afterwards. 20,000 cars is consistently recognised to be an issue with congestion and a big problem for the roads coming in and out of Blythe. Crucially, the information in this area of the environmental statement shows that on key parts of the Coopin Road, the traffic volume never falls below 20,000 cars. So it does not mitigate the problem and also the harm that is recognised to be caused by the residents in those areas. But implementing the scheme along particularly the A1061 does expose residents in Newsham to traffic volumes exceeding 20,000 cars. So you're exposing residents along that area to harm without mitigating the issue elsewhere in the transport network. It's ethically questionable to expose residents to harm based on a proposed delivery of a scheme when the evidence is not in favour that it will be delivered by doing that. This impinges upon the human rights aspect of the committee report, which you've seen before you, and means that it's not in the public interest to grant permission for this scheme. The report does recognise that the harms to residents are significant, and it recognises that there's issues with noise, air pollution and disturbance along the A1061 and in the part of the wider network of the project. We already experience vibration, noise and disturbance in our homes that come from the proximity of the road. You will be halving the distance between my house and worse for other residents by bringing the road that much closer. The physics of this are irrefutable and are not going to be mitigated by a 2-metre barrier. This is insufficient mitigation. So, insufficient evidence to support the implementation of the scheme, lacking robust evidence, no clear delivery of the aims, and significant harms to residents. It's clearly been demonstrated from my point that at the very minimum you should be deferring this application until you gather that robust evidence, and it's my suggestion that you reject the proposal entirely and think again about an innovative, precise solution that addresses the issue.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Stuart McNaughton. Sir, you've got 5 minutes.
I'm Stuart McNaughton, the Head of Strategic Transport and Climate Change at Northumberland County Council, with responsibility for the Council's transport policy and development of the pipeline of strategic transport priorities across all modes of travel, including the Relief Road. The need for the Blythe Relief Road remains clear. A high proportion of local jobs are in sectors such as manufacturing, energy, logistics and port-related services, where homeworking is not feasible, meaning car travel remains essential for many. Car dependency is further reinforced by the dispersed nature of housing and employment across South East Northumberland. The scheme will also complement the Northumberland line in providing regional connectivity and improving east-west flows across the town. Traffic data confirms that congestion remains severe and traffic has continued to grow. The existing network is already operating beyond capacity and will come under increasing strain as planned housing and employment growth adds further demand. Significant investment is planned and underway at the Port of Blythe and surrounding employment areas. Major programmes such as Energising Blythe and the expansion of the clean energy and advanced manufacturing sectors depend on reliable, efficient transport connections to attract further investment. Without the Relief Road, congestion will increasingly constrain development, deter investors and limit the town's ability to realise its full economic potential. The Relief Road comprises of 2 elements, designed to relieve congestion on both Coopin Road and the A1061. The dualling of the A1061 from a new link road off the Three Horseshoes roundabout to the A193 at South Beach. This relieves congestion along the A1061, improving access to the town centre and the Port of Blythe. The A1061 is the port's designated route. The Chase Farm Link Road, this is not a rat run, but adds capacity to the local highway network and provides relief to Coopin Road. In addition, it facilitates improved connectivity to the Chase Farm estate by public transport, as well as active travel connections to the new station at Blythe Bebbside. The previous preferred option incorporated a single, direct link from the Three Horseshoes roundabout to Princess Louise Road via Ogle Drive. However, this route is no longer possible due to the full build-out of the Chase Farm estate. The next best option is as described and provides congestion relief to both Coupon Road and the A1061. The relief road will also deliver wider benefits beyond congestion relief. Provision for segregated walking and cycling routes will connect communities to jobs, education and services, while junction upgrades and improved bus connectivity will support safer and more sustainable travel choices. Mitigation measures will include the following. Additional landscaping and planting will provide habitat improvements. There will be improvements to the football pitch at Isabella and improved accessibility to Isabella Heap. The scheme incorporates sustainable drainage systems as well as carbon reduction measures in design, construction and operation. A noise barrier will be constructed to the west of Newsham and quieter road surfacing will be incorporated on the A1061. Intelligent traffic signals will improve the throughput of traffic along the A1061, acknowledging the fact that there will be additional traffic lights put in place. In terms of development of the project, the outline business case has been submitted to the Department for Transport for review and approval and is bidding into the National Roads Fund for government funding. A government funding announcement last month did not include Blythe Relief Road, although a further announcement is anticipated in early summer. Approval of this application today will provide further confidence to government that this scheme is deliverable. In conclusion, the Blythe Relief Road forms both a transport intervention and a catalyst for economic and social regeneration, ensuring that Blythe's future growth is supported by modern, resilient infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, have you any questions you would like to put to our planning officers? Gordon Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. And for the officers, the second speaker mentioned about the data being out of date because of the successful Northumberland line. Any comment you'd like to make about that?
I mean, I specifically have discussed this with the applicant, and a number of surveys have been done. So there sort of were surveys done for the original optioneering exercise, and then there was further surveys done in, I think the speaker mentioned 2023. I mean, the Newsham Station, Northumberland line, I mean, Bedlingham Station only opened last week. So in an ideal world, yes, it would be ideal to have, you know, more behavioural information. But even if the Northumberland line continues to prosper as it is, for the reasons that I stated in my presentation, it isn't going to address all the issues that sort of these two road connections will address. So the Northumberland line will assist, but I mean, it's not going to remove the need for road schemes and other traffic management measures within Blythe to tackle congestion and to tackle the need to improve that connectivity to the stations and beyond, which are at the western side of Blythe. So, I mean, there may be further behavioural change in the past, but certainly my discussions with the applicants are that isn't going to be sufficient to remove the need for improvements such as this within the town of Blythe.
Thank you.
Caroline Ball.
Thank you, Chair. So with regards to public health, there's no objections on that grounds at all, which I'm a bit surprised at, because on the site visit this morning, I was quite shocked at how close the roads are going to be to people's houses. And obviously we have seen in other parts of the country some of the consequences of being so close and pollution caused by roads. So that's one issue. The network is put up here doesn't tackle some of the other bigger issues as well around Bebbside Station, the Free Horseshoes roundabout and Slip Road, which are raised today as well. So I think that needs looked at, and also the noise mitigation. I'm really quite concerned that's only part of the plan. It doesn't go right the way along, and especially where some of the houses are really quite close to the road. We're talking about tackling inequality. One end of the road, which has got the same number of cars coming down it with the same amount of noise, gets sound mitigation and the other end doesn't. That doesn't sit right with me at all. And also, what guarantees the people that are getting the sound barrier, well, that end doesn't need them, so you're not getting them, and it's saving money. Them issues all just don't sit right with me at all. So put my mind at ease, please.
Well, public health required a full, I mean, there's two types of public health assessment can be done. There's a rapid public health assessment, and then there is a full-blown public health assessment report. Public health were consulted on this application. They required a full public health assessment report to be prepared. One was prepared. That has gone back to, I mean, I can't speak for public health. All I can say is that public health have read the detailed public health assessment report that was submitted and have no objections to the scheme. I mean, what public health have recognised is that there are roads everywhere adjacent to housing. So, you know, yes, in an ideal world, you know, that gap on the, for example, on the Chase Farm link would be wider, but it isn't possible to be wider. So public health have actually recognised that there are wider benefits being achieved through this, and they are not objecting either on air quality or noise or health grounds. Okay, so that's one thing. The second thing is that environmental health have been consulted in terms of the noise issues. There was a noise assessment submitted, and environmental health haven't objected. Their view is that in an ideal world you would have more acoustic barriers in relation to this scheme. You know, so in an ideal world they would like more acoustic barriers, but there are, in parts of the scheme, you know, for example, parts of the Chase Farm link, there's just not enough room to sort of get earth mounding or acoustic barriers. And in the area that sort of you're referring to, the sort of area between the coast and the Sandringham Drive, environmental health haven't seen the need for an acoustic barrier in that area. The sort of reasons for not coming forward with an acoustic barrier are partly that the noise assessment didn't demonstrate that it was needed. Secondly, that on environmental grounds it would have a significant effect on people's amenity, people's views out, and also on air quality grounds. Environmental health were content that that a barrier wasn't needed in order, you know, for either for noise or sort of air quality reasons. You know, so these are the views of the expert services that we consult. There was a third point you made, but I can't. It was a middle point. Which one? What was that?
The guarantees.
Website station.
Sorry?
Was it website station, Councillor Ball?
Yeah. The fact that website station and the free horseshoes with roads.
Yeah.
They are still going to be, if we're looking at this to solve the problems for Blythe,
yeah.
we need to look at them bigger issues as well, because if not, people are still going to be sat on website roundabout.
Yeah. Right, well, I think what I've stressed all along is that the applicant isn't looking at this to solve all the problems of Blythe. You know, what the applicant is saying is that we've put in Newsham Station, we've put in bedside station, you know, that is going to improve accessibility for the people in Blythe. These road schemes will also have their effect in relieving congestion. I heard what the public speaker said about volumes of traffic going forward. But if you don't have this scheme, these volumes of traffic down Coupon Road aren't just going to stabilise at what they are just now. As Stuart McNaughton says, you know, they are going to increase. So you've got Northumberland line, you've got Blythe Relief Road, the two elements of that. Even that, it's recognised, isn't going to solve all the traffic problems of Blythe. There will continue to be a need for other interventions over the years. You know, there's sort of lots of ways that you can intervene in you know, with traffic management measures, you know, closing off side roads, you know, one-way access, etc., etc. There is going to be a need for these localised measures that the County Council will conduct as part of its annual programmes of, you know, road improvements. I agree with you that a big issue is that section between the Asda roundabout, on Coupon Road, the top of Coupon Road, going out of Asda, turning left, and going up to the A189. I mean, I'm not a traffic engineer, and it's beyond me. It's beyond my ability to sort of say, you know, how, if ever, that area of congestion is going to be relieved. But what the applicant is saying is that by providing by providing basically a third way into Blythe from the A189, so you've got the A1061, you've got the Three Horseshoes Coupon Road, you will have this new road that will link across the new agricultural fields into the A1061. That will have an effect in diverting some traffic away from the Coupon Road, as the modelling has shown it would do. But there are still going to be traffic problems. I mean, no one is pretending that these two roads are going to solve all of Blythe's problems, and that's not the justification for them. It's to assist in relieving congestion, it's to assist in opening up economic development and the future prosperity of the town.
Thank you. Councillor Georgina Hill.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just very quickly make a point, and so you know where my questions are coming from. Got a couple of quick questions. It is this, you know, the harm benefit, and absolutely can see the potential benefit, which would mitigate the harm. But it's on the facts about the benefits where I'm struggling with, where, you know, there is a suggestion in the speakers and so on that it won't alleviate the problems and it's disproportionate, etc. So just a couple of questions on that. In terms of there be another intense round of assessment on the business case, if you like. So just say this was approved. Now I know it's not directly in planning, but it's just to get some comfort. It would be another assessment. Would the government say, right, this has been approved, we've got this funding money, North East hasn't, Northumberland County Council telling us, because, you know, we are the applicant, talking about the applicant, we are, and actually, yeah, North East should get this chunk of money and the MPs agree with it and all the rest? Or do they have a round of very intense business case looking at modelling and so on? So is that another round of assurance for us around the value for money? And I mean, I know the Treasury with various things about this sort of investment are concerned about the future proofing as well. You know, the sort of investment in A1 and mod technology is going at such a rate. Is it worth spending the tens of million pounds? Is another assessment. And the second one is in a very simple terms, this isn't an area, you know, I'm not technical on this sort of thing, it's not an area I live, but can you give me just one or two stats that show the level of congestion and what this would do? So just for example, I'm making up a stat, but you could say, you know, an average road in Northumberland, in a large town, Northumberland gets 500 cars an hour. I'm just making up the stat. This one gets 2,000, and the national average should be this. And with this scheme, it will now go down to less than that. Have you got any stats that can help give assurance that the congestion is there and this would Deputy Lewis.
I mean, I can deal, I'm not the applicant, but I can deal with part of your first question, okay? Because I've had discussions about the status of this road, you know, with the applicants, you know, what state, you know. So my understanding of the status of this road is that there have been ongoing discussions with the Department of Transport for a number of years about whether the Department of Transport would fund this scheme, that it's passed various tests en route, you know, so it's, you know, it gets to one stage and then it gets to another stage. In terms of, I mean, it's not a trunk road scheme, you know, so it's not that it's not in the same pot of money as the A1 or the Western Bypass thing. So it's in a different pot of money. Now, my understanding is that in that pot of money, there were a number of regional schemes identified a few years ago, and some of these have subsequently dropped off the, you know, for whatever reason, you know, in Durham or in Tyne and Wear, and that this scheme is still on that list, and so it is either the only scheme or it is one of the few schemes that are still on that list, which means that it still can get funding from that pot of money. What needs to happen now is that the full business case needs to be submitted, supported by, as Stuart has said, the additional comfort that it's deliverable through the planning system, which is the purpose of submitting these two planning applications. In terms of the second aspect, I think that's probably a highways development management matter.
The whole scheme went through a transport assessment, and as part of that assessment, 21 junctions in and around the area were assessed as to how this scheme would impact on those junctions. Some it reduced the traffic on some, it slightly increased it on others. It basically just redistributed the current traffic through the various different routes. So it did alleviate some sort of bottlenecks, partly on, say, Coopham Road. So a model of the whole of those 21 junctions was undertaken to see, is this needed? Does that help? I cannot give you stats as such. It did say there was congestion, and this would alleviate the congestion that's there and redistribute it.
Chair, if I could
Yes, certainly.
just
ask a technical question on the kind of machinery or
No.
AI modelling or whatever you've
Yeah.
done, but I accept that you've done that.
Yeah.
Not have to leap of faith.
Councillor Hill, just to add to already the great responses that you've got from the officers, it's, you know, we don't have the information of, you know, what capacity and how you assess that on each road, but what we do know is that the traffic around Blythe is severe, and that as a whole, for the whole time, the existing network runs beyond capacity. So something's got to be done to resolve that. And the scheme that's come forward is a two-part scheme. Both parts of the scheme have got to be taken and read together, and they will allow the network to run differently, which should alleviate some of the pressure in those key areas that you talk of, like Coopham Road and, you know, what people refer to as the Asda roundabout as well. So although there aren't mitigations proposed for there, the modelling is telling us is that both of these outcomes taken together will relieve the pressure on those areas of Blythe.
Questions? Malcolm Robinson and then Martin.
Thank you. Go on, 3 questions, quick questions. We've heard that the funding isn't even in place. This is the second time it's been to this committee. So how sure are we that we're going to get the funding for this to happen? Aligned to that, all your reservations you talk about, your conditions, and hundreds of them, how confident are you that if it does go ahead, we're going to recognise it based on what we're seeing now? And my third question is about the East-West Road. And I'm a little bit concerned about, I can see, and the more we looked at it this morning, the different areas we went to, you could see the benefits more and more and more, I think, me. But what I can't get away from is where it starts and where it finishes. Because Tynedale Road, especially that end, I mean, that's just so unsuitable for an increase in traffic. We've got to do something with the existing road, surely. And I mean, same at the football end, it's not, it's just going off into and into a state road, really. You know, we're talking about relieving traffic and whatnot, and for this one in particular, we're relying on feeder roads into estates. It just doesn't compute to me. So are we going to get the funding? And I think you've partly answered that by saying if we get the planning, we might get the funding, or better chance to get the funding. Will we recognise the scheme that we're looking at now because of all these reservations and conditions and everything else you've got to get over, because this isn't detailed? And are we going to get something done with the ends of that new East-West Road? Because I think, and you know, if I'm coming along there, Tynedale, and I might as well go up and use the dual carriageway instead of going through, because I'm going to be hit with all these stops and starts, and I'm going to be hit with kids running across the road, almost certainly. So I would probably go up and go down your new dual carriageway anyway.
Well, okay. I mean, whether it gets the funding or not, I can make the simple comment to you. You are a planning committee, and it is not a planning consideration whether this is going to get the funding. But if it doesn't get planning permission, it won't get the funding. So we can, we can tell you that. But it, it shouldn't, it shouldn't really, it is not a planning consideration really. But it's got more chance of. Well, I've just said it. It needs a planning consent. It needs to be shown that it's deliverable. In terms of what you're saying, I mean, when I'm saying that yes, there are a lot of conditions, but it's on the detail. The principles are not going to affect it. So we're still talking about two roads. We're talking about dualling of the A10 1060. 61, we're talking about a new overbridge, all the key elements of both roads will be as they are proposed. Where it might change is the detail. And a lot of the detail are things that are permitted development on existing roads. So the position of bus stops, the position of Toucan crossings, the sort of detail of the roundabout construction at the top of Tynedale Drive. It's that sort of level of detail. The landscaping proposals. So for one of the things that I've asked for is increased landscaping in various parts of the scheme, and there are two detailed landscaping provisions. So when it comes forward at the detailed scheme, what I'm expecting is further landscaping and planting than has. There's a lot already being proposed, but really I'm expecting more at that detailed stage. I don't know how to answer your question about either end. I mean, it's a fact that the planning application runs from Ogle Drive through to whatever it's called, Chase Farm. That's I can see that certainly at the Chase Farm end, it's narrow, and it's going between existing areas of housing, which are quite narrow in that. But I mean, that is the proposal. There is no suggestion that the principle of where the road starts and where the road ends is going to change. You know, the sort of detail of the construction of that roundabout at Chase Farm has still got to be decided, you know, will be, you know, still to be decided.
I would have just thought, if it's listed as the relief road, then you'd start on the road you're trying to relieve and end up on the other road you're trying to relieve for an east-west one. That's all.
Yeah. Well, the answer to that...
Kind of doing 4/5 of it, but the little bits at each end we've missed. That,
well, the answer to that is that the section from the Asda, you know, from Coupon Road to Chase Farm Road, that is considered to be, you know, at an acceptable standard for the increased traffic that we're talking about. You know, it's we sort of travelled along it today. You know, I mean, there are no significant constraints along that road. And again, we're talking about roads within urban areas that are going to be subject to speed restrictions. So, you know, there will be lots of there are lots of safety measures proposed on the two roads. You know, there are other interventions that no doubt over the years will be considered. I mean, I come from Edinburgh. If you go to Edinburgh, you can hardly drive along a road in Edinburgh that is not now a 20-mile-an-hour limit. You know, that hasn't happened across the whole of Northumberland. You know, there are 20-mile roads. But, you know, so there are other interventions that will happen over the years in order to relieve congestion, cope with additional traffic, make sure that what happens on the highway is safe. It isn't going to be possible to mitigate, you know, all the loss of amenity that some properties will experience. I mean, we saw that today, that, you know, every scheme has pros and cons. And, you know, the benefits in this scheme are quite considerable in terms of opening up the economic regeneration of one of the main towns in Northumberland, which, as Liz has stressed, is suffering in lots of ways from congestion. And these, you know, I'm repeating myself, but, you know, it needs to be tackled, and it needs to be tackled in a series of measures over a number of years, of which this relief road in its two elements is one.
Well, aspect. I remember when it came the last time, and I voiced against it, but we were told it's this or nothing. So if it's this or nothing, then I agreed with it last time. I'll probably agree with it this time, but, you know.
Yes, can I just say, Gordon, I do get Malcolm's point. You know, we've got a super duper road in the middle, east-west, but then we've got like little slip roads feeding in. And while I'm sure the major part of the road is going to be excellent, it does seem an oddity that we've got two little bits on the end that really look a bit substandard. So, yeah. But can I just move standing orders, please? Because we've gone over our limit. So would someone like to move standing orders? Malcolm, somebody seconded? Gordon. Thank you very much. The meeting can continue. Any more questions? Martin.
Thank you, Chair. It's kind of almost a universal law of increasing road capacity. You might redistribute traffic, but ultimately you will increase traffic and you'll get back to the same point of congestion you were originally. The only question is how long that will take. But my question really is, one way that you can alleviate that is improving other modes of transport. Now, I'm very pleased to see that there are cycling routes, walking routes alongside these routes. That's good. Part of it has been talked about is to increase bus travel through some of these places that don't have buses serving them at all, which is good because it gives people the option. My question firstly is, though, are we sure that actually for people walking and cycling particularly, that the ends of these routes do filter in a safe way to the places where people wish to go to? Because it's all very well having a great 2-mile section of cycle route. If the ends of the route are not safe, people will not use it. And coming back to my first point, if we're just going to create more traffic because people feel it's unsafe to cycle, we're rapidly going to get to the point of same congestion that we've got now. First, that's the first question. Second question is the section on the close to South Beach, I think it's called, where the road terminates by the beach. That first section where the proposal is to put the dual carriageway into the green space effectively between the road we've got now and the houses. Was it considered to put the dual carriageway at the other side of the road into the green belt? Because we're putting it into the green belt on the rest of the road, as far as I can work out. And if so, why was that discounted?
I mean, on your first point, there have been incredibly detailed consultation responses from Active Travel England. I mean, Active Travel England have, I don't know if you've been onto the public access site, but you know, they could not support the original proposals and asked for in particular clarification on cycling and public transport, cycling and pedestrian travel, and reassurances and further information, including the information that you talked about secondly, which is linking into adjacent areas. And there's been lots of discussion right up until the 11th hour, and again there are conditions that sort of recognise Active Travel England's concerns, and that, you know, so there are certain aspects of, for example, whether it's a toucan crossing or another type of crossing, whether it's a whether it's a dual use, you know, pedestrians and cycle, there are certain aspects of that sort of will be dealt with at the reserve matter stage. So the principle of these connections, you know, the sort of line of these connections are settled, but the sort of detail of, you know, whether they're dual or whether they're, or the width of them, etc., is the subject of conditions. So Active Travel England are satisfied, both in terms of what's being proposed along here and of its links into existing other rights of way and pedestrian movements and cycle movements. That's all I can answer on that. These are the people that are the experts. These are the people that we've consulted. These are the people that have expressed satisfaction with it and have done it in a very detailed way. In terms of the A1061, now, the answer to that is, my understanding is that both were considered, so putting a carriageway to the north of the existing carriageway into the green area and a new carriageway to the south in the green belt. And for a variety of reasons, it was decided that the planning application would go with the one that has been submitted. So the actual detailed reasons for that, I'm not fully conversant with them, but the sorts of things that they would have considered are, it would have been a greater incursion into the green belt. Therefore, it would have risked falling foul of green belt policy. It would have involved the removal of the existing hedging and trees all along that extensive stretch that effectively provides a screening to the south. And on balance, they have decided to put in the planning application that sort of takes it, that sort of runs the sort of road along the north.
Thank you. Any more questions, ladies and gentlemen? No more questions? Would someone like to move a proposal? Please. Malcolm Robinson.
Chair, can I just confirm just the wording in the recommendation says that the application be granted permission. Can we just confirm that's subject to the conditions?
And is that seconded by Councillor Stewart? Debate, ladies and gentlemen. You know, all I'd like to say from the chair is that, you know, it was great that so many of you came to the site visit this morning. It's one thing to read a map, but actually to see it in perspective, how it relates to the houses, gives you a totally different slant on the application, and, you know, really worthwhile. And thank you very much to the officers. That was much appreciated. Caroline Ball.
Thanks, Chair. So I think this should be deferred, to be honest. I think without the Bebbside Free Horseshoes Asda in that bigger scheme, I don't think it's workable. And because of the site visit this morning, as somebody that has spent days of my life stuck on Coupon Road getting through to the town centre, I just think it's not. I know Plan A is not available because of cost, environment and ownership. But I think there's got to be a better way than this, because I don't think it's going to solve the problem, and I think it could potentially cause more issues. When you look at some of the estate roads, moving the football pitch, half a football pitch across, it's going to give them a great football pitch with better drainage, but also there's still going to be parents parked along the side of that football pitch, but there's going to be more cars coming along the side of there. And I think, as I say, without that wider scheme, I worry that we do 3/4 of what's needed. There's still problems at either end. You've still got the problem at Asda, you've still got the problem at Bedside, you've still got the problem at the Free Horseshoes. That we're not going to get a second bite of the cherry for funding, so go big or go home, as they say, or like, let's get it right first time. And I honestly do not think this is the right scheme at the moment as it sits. So that's where I'm at. I can't support it as it is. Thank you.
Georgina. Oh, did you want a word?
I mean, is it appropriate? You know, I hear what you say, Councillor Bowles, about, you know, mulling over the idea of a deferment. You know, these projects need to go so far to be able to attract the funding that comes from central government, but that is not material to planning. The reason that you would be asking for a deferral, you know, we would need something just much more from you, because what we're hearing is, you know, highways engineers, active travel engineers, there's been a lot of technical oversight of this project to reassure ourselves that what we're proposing here is going to be a modern, resilient piece of infrastructure that's going to accommodate not just vehicles, but also all other modes of transport in a really modern way. And that taken together, it will alleviate the problems on those pieces of infrastructure that you don't see the operational development coming to. So I hope that clears it up. It's really important that you look at the bigger picture and that you listen to what's coming in from the technical engineers, not just what your feeling is. The piece also about the sort of the two end bits to the Chase Farm proposal, you know, maybe that isn't quite to the standards that you'd like to see. That could be the second part of the project. It's got to start somewhere than nowhere, and lose the opportunities of not taking planning tonight.
Yeah, and just from the chair, Caroline, you know, we are making a little bit of progress here. Yes, it doesn't solve all the problems, but at least we're getting a little way along the road and trying to solve some of the problem. Councillor Georgina Hill.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I was just going to say, if this proposal fails, then I would be tempted to back Councillor Bowles' proposal, because I'm really struggling with this one, because as I said at the beginning, it's this harm versus benefit, cost versus benefit, which cost you could argue is a type of harm. I mean, when we were on the site visit today, you very much saw very visually the impact on residents, both in the construction phase and the end result. And if, and I say potentially, the benefit, of course, would outweigh that, but I'm just not convinced from the arguments I've said, and I'm almost searching within myself for a hunch. You know, in a few years' time, will people say, this is wonderful? Well, how long? Oh my God, wait, isn't this wonderful? Look what it's relieved. Or are we more likely to hear people say, it's had a little bit of benefit, but not for that money, or even it's a complete waste of money? And my hunch is the latter. So I would potentially support deferment, but I would otherwise vote against.
Councillor John Bennion.
Thanks, Chair. I think I'm the same position as the other two councillors. I'm still unsure. When we went on the site visit, today, the part that Martin just brought up there from the coast road, where you're going to put just in between the road and the houses, and I couldn't believe that they're going to be putting them that close when you have fields the other side. And I know this is a pet subject that I always have to go with Liz about what's green belt and what's not green belt. But you're going to destroy people's lives, really, by putting the road that close when you can put it in a field at the other side. And again, I agree with Malcolm, the two ends. And I know we're kind of under pressure because if we don't take it, well, we'll lose the money. I'm still so undecided, but it just doesn't feel right to me, I'm afraid.
Any more contributions? Gordon Stewart.
What is the planning committee here to do today? Make a decision about whether this application is lawful and appropriate. Would the planning officer like to comment upon what I've just said there?
So there's two aspects to this scheme. There's one where it's gone through a corporate work stream where it's been designed, it's got buy-in from Cabinet, it's got buy-in from full council and budgeting to support that as well. The role of the planning committee isn't to question the proposal and how it's come before you today. It's to ask yourself, does it work? And do all of the features of it make a difference to alleviate what we understand is the severe traffic congestion that's ongoing in Blythe, and that is only going to get worse if there are not measures introduced to improve it. There's been 5 options on the table, and for lots of different reasons, we're down to this one last option, which is still viable and it still works. So the question for the planning committee today is, have you heard anything from any of the experts or the engineers to tell you that it won't work? And we don't believe that you have. Everything is telling you that this scheme will work to alleviate the traffic congestion into Blythe and bring all the whole hosts of benefits that we've talked to you about with it. And that is the role of the planning committee today, is to ask yourselves, will it work? We are saying it will work. We're not saying anything to tell us that it won't, other than sort of speculation on your part, and that's not the role of the planning committee. Make an evidence-based choice on the information and the technical advice that's provided to you. And as I said before, this is your opportunity to make a real difference to alleviate the traffic in Blythe, and often it is the case that during construction it can be challenging, but when these alleviation measures and relief roads are up and running, there's nobody regrets them, and they can bring great benefits to towns, and this is what's been forecast for Blythe. So I want you to think really carefully before you make your decision tonight, because the risk is that at this point, to defer or to refuse means that it could be the end of journey for any alleviation funding coming to Blythe to relieve the traffic.
Councillor Robinson.
For exactly the reasons Liz has said, we've got to grab it. We've got to grab this opportunity. because if we don't, it goes, and it might never ever come back. So, you know, got to grab it.
Well, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, you've heard our wise words from our planning officer. You've heard them from the proposer. Will you support his recommendation to approve? All those in favour, would you raise your hands? Those against? 2. Those abstaining? 1. That is passed. Thank you. Well done. Anything else? Yeah. Just, ladies and gentlemen, before you all disappear, we've got our update on the section 106, pages 167 to 170. For your information, I have no urgent business. I want to thank you for attending the site visit and attending this meeting. It's been a good evening. Thanks for the debate.
Just before we go, can I ask why we're not getting the full gambit of reports that we used to get? The officers' decisions, the appealed decisions, stuff like that.
I do apologise if they weren't. You will be getting them. It may be that they just weren't ready for this round. Sorry about that. I'll make sure. Yeah. Were they there?
Thank you very much.